Hello, this is Keith Black, presented by Francis Nella Castro. The world has various role models that are remembered because of significant actions that have helped shape the world into what we know it. In its entirety, there are people that have influence in it spiritually, culturally, and even physically. Each part of the world has its role models that everyone looks at and studies. The United States is no different. There have been great minds that have innovated and impacted the country in such a way that it is short history span of a little over 250 years. Relatively speaking, books and lectures have been written and taught over and over throughout the years. Icons such as Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, and Cesar Chavez have some examples of minorities that have made such an impact. To be a minority in the United States, it is to be looked down upon and treated unequally as history can depict. Challenges have risen for each group throughout the history of the United States. Unfortunately, not everyone has had an impact in studies and raised on a pedestal like the individuals mentioned before. One minority example is an individual by the name of Keith Black. Keith Black was born on September 13, 1957, in Tuskegee, Alabama, and is currently still living. It is interesting that Keith is not studied as intensely as others because his work is very important. He has been a huge part of the medical advance in neurosurgery. Keith was born to a Lillian and Robert Black, who not only taught him at home, but they were a school teacher and the principal of Boykin Street Elementary School, respectively. During this period of time that Robert was principal, the law had been passed that school segregation was unconstitutional. This was a challenge because in Alabama, the state government had continued the mandate for white and black children to separate. Robert tried to bring the idea of integrating different races into his school by hiring teachers with different ethnic backgrounds. Even Robert even encouraged Keith to swim in the only whites pool. Keith was inclined towards biology and quickly started to dissect whatever he can get his hands on, such as frogs. Robert noticed this, and to encourage him, he even brought him a cow's heart for him to pull apart. As Keith grew up, the family moved towards Cleveland, Ohio, where he joined an apprentice program to learn basic laboratory skills and eventually started to work part-time at Cleveland St. Luke's Hospital. With the experience that he quickly gained, he became an assistant to Frederick Cross and Richard Jones, who were the inventors of the Cross-Jones artificial heart valve. With their help, he learned to work on laboratory dogs, and he performed heart valve replacement and transplant surgeries. With the patient that had heart valve replacement, he noticed that there were blood cells that were damaged in the patients, and when he published this information at the age of 17, when he graduated, Keith was admitted to the University of Michigan Medical School Accelerated program, in which he was able to finish his undergrad and medical school in 6 years. Early on, he started to just study any material that he could get his hands on that could enlighten him in the mechanism of the human consciousness. He studied psychology, physiology, philosophy, religion, and even mysticism in search of this information. By the age of 24, Keith took an internship at the University of Michigan, and in 1987 he became an assistant professor of neurology at the University of California, Los Angeles. For a decade after Keith worked and perfected his craft and developing new technologies that would allow him to better attack this challenge that came across him as a neurosurgeon, brain tumors. If too much was cut, then the chance of the brain not functioning was great. But if the right amount was not cut, then there was a chance that the brain or cancer would return. One of the major issues that Keith ran into was that chemotherapy was not working on the brain the way it works on other parts of the body. The brain has a way of being able to dilute such medication to where the cancer impacted areas were not receiving the amount of medication that they needed in order for it to take the desired effect. There were various theories, but none seemed to have worked. Ultimately, Keith came across a peptide by the name of bradykinin. This peptide allowed for it to pass through the healthy capillaries without a problem and attack only the cancerous tissue. Empowered with new technology, Keith patented a new therapy called RMP7, which was a synthetic version of bradykinin in 1994. At this time, he was also appointed the lead of the school comprehensive brain tumor program. In the field of neurosurgery, surgeons typically do less than 100 surgeries in 1 year. Keith normally performs twice in any given year. Keith also has a record of performing over 5,000 surgeries in the first 20 years of his career. An instance where surgeons would not go anywhere near a patient's brain because they believe it was inoperable, Keith was able to step in and save the life of the patient. Keith was able to create a method in which he could attack clival chordae, a cancer that developed at the base of the skull and is very deadly. In the past, surgeons would slide at the bottom of the skull in an attempt to reach the tumor, but unfortunately, they would cause an irreparable damage to the brain and therefore the patient. The method that Keith developed went through the nasal passage and extracted the damaged tissue without touching the brain at all. Keith had made such a huge impact in the lives of other people that were in need. Keith is still currently living and still making a difference in the world. Within the past 15 years, he has been able to open a new research center that focuses on the brain. He named it Cochrane Center, which was named after Johnny L. Cochrane, a defense attorney and a former patient of Keith who supported him in his efforts to find a cure for brain cancer. Keith is currently working on being able to remotely perform surgeries without the surgeon having to present in the room. The knowledge and techniques that has been able to develop are blessings to humanity and for the future of those that are to come. The end.